Hello, my friends. D.L. Anderson here. Welcome back to Transformation by Truth podcast as we share the truth concerning these last days and what you must do to save yourself from the violent times that are just ahead. Today's podcast is a word of truth accounting of the end times. The end is coming. The end is near. Today's podcast is entitled End Times 470, A Fearless Nation of Fearful Men, the Downfall of Those Who Do Not Fear Elohim. The podcast objectives are analyze how prejudice creeps into your mind, analyze how fear and despair work against the fear of Elohim, and reveal how fear has gripped our nation in these last days. Stop the process before he gets started. Shalom, my beloved brothers and sisters, and welcome to day 316 of our exposition of lawlessness. In the most recent podcast, we analyze the impact of blasphemy in your heart, to wit, the critical degree of prejudice. In doing so, we came to see the full impact of prejudice and how its 3 degrees are 3 of the deadliest strongholds you will ever incur. And now we must analyze how you can tear down these 3 strongholds. My dear friends, you must believe me. The progression of prejudice and contempt does more damage to your being than any other. This is why the fear of Elohim is so crucial. Vis-a-vis, it is the elixir for the spiritual disease of prejudice. Therefore, we must analyze how the fear of Elohim defeats prejudice at the high level and at the detailed level, the same way we did for virtue and contempt, obedience and disobedience, faith and doubt. Let's get started. Now, in beginning this analysis, I would first remind you that your war with contempt is the longest war you will fight during your campaign for power. And we analyzed these battles in prior podcasts, to wit, your victories over dishonesty, unrighteousness, and defilement. Here lies the inflection. Vis-a-vis, contempt is the invading army of prejudice. Ergo, if the invading army is indeed formidable, the enemy nation must also be formidable. And this reality supports the following interest point. The war you fight with prejudice is the most intense war you will fight during your campaign for power. Now, if you're not convinced, I advise you to consider all the men and women in our world who have been infected with the spiritual disease of prejudice. Consider those who are in the religious circuit and those who are without. Now, ask yourself the following question. Can someone who has deep-seated prejudice easily overcome their prejudice? The answer is sure. Overcoming prejudice is not easy at all. In fact, it is one of the hardest things some of us will ever do. The reason why is sure. It is because most men and women who are infected with some form of prejudice will harden their prejudice over time. And in doing so, they will be infected with additional forms of prejudice. Here again, the reason why is sure. Vis-a-vis, prejudice has a web-like nature that forms a network of lawlessness throughout your entire being. That includes your mind, a crucial fault which reveals the following inflection point. By nature, the soul is designed for the mind to influence the heart in the order of influencing your will. However, the degrees of lawlessness all were contrary to nature. Ergo, prejudice not only casts a web of immorality, irreverence, and blasphemy within your heart. Quite the contrary, the spirit of prejudice takes the next step and it pushes a web of bias and bigotry into your mind. Now, the question we should chiefly entertain is why? To wit, why does prejudice permeate your mind when your mind has already been conquered by disobedience and doubt? The answer is sure. The leading 4 degrees of lawlessness are governed by the Ruach of self. And he or she is determined to contaminate your heart and your mind with as much lawlessness as possible. Along these lines, self will not adhere to the natural process of disobedience and doubt flowing into your heart. Quite the contrary, he or she will also authorize an unnatural progression in which prejudice and contempt permeate your mind from your heart. My dear friends, this is one more witness to the all or nothing nature of spiritual warfare. Let me tell you something. The enemy is not content with your mind being filled with disobedience and doubt. Quite the contrary, he wants to put strongholds of prejudice and contempt in your mind as well. And he will, if you let him, to wit, if you don't stop the process before he gets started. A nation full of fear. Now, the question of the hour is sure. How do you stop the process before it gets started? Seeing how your victory over prejudice is more difficult if the enemy establishes strongholds within your heart and your mind. How do you defeat him? How do you stop the process before it starts? The answer is sure. You will defeat him the same way you defeated disobedience and doubt. Likewise, you will defeat him the same way you defeated his invading army, i.e., contempt. To wit, you will defeat him by following the linear model of holiness. And although I have already told you why this is the key to your success, allow me to remind you with the following interest point. Every degree of holiness is superior to its counterpart of lawlessness. Ergo, all who have the Ruach of Elohim possess the power to defeat every degree of lawlessness. Now, before we begin analyzing the fear of Elohim to see how this degree of holiness defeats the spirit of prejudice, the Ruach is leading me to warn this audience of the primary reason why many will fail to win their battles with immorality, irreverence, and blasphemy. Besides the obvious fact that they are not reigning over contempt, it is because they are full of fear, and not reverential fear. Quite the contrary, they're full of fear and despair. They are plagued by worries and excess cares. This matter reveals a crucial matter concerning the relationship between reverential fear and the fear that comes when you despair. And I will capture it with the following interest point. Consider this. Fear is a primary driver and application of despair. And despair is the fundamental degree of doubt. And doubt is a disease of the mind. Ergo, when fear enters the heart via despair, it becomes a major blocker to your attainment of the fear of Elohim. We know this because despair is antitrust. And where there is no trust, there can be no reverential fear. And where there is no reverential fear, there will be persistent transgression of the command of Elohim, and the people will be under a curse. Deuteronomy 28, 15 through 68 is revealing. And it shall be, if you do not obey the voice of Yahuwah, your Elohim, to guard all his commands and his laws, which I command you today, that all these curses shall come upon you and overtake you, and you shall be left with few men, although you have become as numerous as the stars of the heavens, because you did not obey the voice of Yahuwah, your Elohim. And Yahuwah shall scatter you among all the peoples, from one end of the earth to the other. And there you shall serve other mighty ones, which neither you nor your fathers have known. And among those nations you are to find no rest, nor have a resting place for the sole of your foot. But there Yahuwah shall give you a trembling heart, and failing eyes, and sorrow of being. And your life shall be hanging in suspense before you, and you shall fear night and day, and not be certain of your life. In the morning you say, oh, that it were evening. And at evening you say, oh, that it were morning. Because of the fear of your heart, with which you fear, and because of the sight which your eyes see. Who we are really serving. Now, these verses, although very depressing, are also very clear. Vis-a-vis, the former nation went into captivity because they did not fear Yahuwah, their Elohim. And because they would not fear him in the spirit of reverence, they fell prey to fear, anxiety, and distress. Brothers and sisters, hear me carefully as I say, the captivity for many in this nation has not ended. To wit, they are still under the curse, for they are enduring all the plagues which are recorded in Deuteronomy 28 and more. This is why they are full of fear. Trust me, I know, I've seen it. To wit, I've seen men and women full of fear refuse to guard the Shabbat because they are more afraid of losing their jobs than disobeying the command of Elohim. Why? It's because they have more faith in their jobs, in the system, than they have in Elohim. To wit, they are fearless when it comes to guarding his commands, and yet they are fearful when it comes to breaking the rules and norms of the system. What fools! What God are you serving? Moshe tells us in Deuteronomy 28. For look, listen, it has been written, you shall serve other mighty ones, which neither you nor your fathers have known. Look again and listen. Guard yourselves, lest your heart be deceived, and you turn aside and serve other mighty ones. And it shall be, if you by any means forget Yahuwah, your Elohim, and follow other mighty ones, I have warned you this day that you shall certainly perish. Now, considering this word of warning, I would ask all the cowards and lawbreakers in the dying nation of Israel, why would you fear any man above Elohim? Why? You can always find a new job, but you can't come back from the dead. Matthew 10:28 is revealing, and do not fear those who kill the body, but are unable to kill the being, but rather fear him who is able to destroy both the being and the body in Gehenna. Now, let me tell you something, you false Hebrews and transgressors in Jacob. You are not serving Elohim. You are serving false mighty ones out of fear, which is why you are yet under a curse. And if you don't repent and fast, you will die under a curse. Now, for those of you who are hearing this word of warning and being convicted, that's a good thing. Trust me, we all arrive at this inflection at some point in our lives. That is the crossroads where we must choose who we are really serving. Now, the key word here is really. For, as I have said before and often, our nation has been sorely infected with the spirit of dishonesty. Alas, this is why many so-called preachers refuse to practice what they preach. And this is clear evidence. The fear of Elohim is not in them. For the fear of Elohim is the primary application of virtue. Ergo, where there is no honesty, there can be no fear for Elohim. And without the fear of Elohim, we will struggle to guard his commands, and it will not be well with us. Deuteronomy 5:29 is revealing, oh, that they had such a heart in them to fear me and to guard all my commands always, so that it might be well with them and with their children forever. Deuteronomy 10:12. And now, Israel, what is your Elohim asking of you but to fear Yahuwah, your Elohim, to walk in all his ways, and to love him, and to serve Yahuwah, your Elohim, with all your heart and with all your being. Now, per the latter verse, we see that Yahuwah is asking of us four things: to fear him, to walk in his ways, to love him, and to serve him, in that order. Ergo, the only way we can walk in his ways, love him, and serve him is if we first learn how to fear him. Now, these things being what they surely are, I ask you to pay close attention to this upcoming series dedicated to the analysis of the fear of Elohim. For you will never be in service of the Most High Elohim if your heart has not been fixed within his fear. Selah. Now, here is the final word. An evil matter is always near to those who live their lives in fear. Brothers and sisters, hear me carefully as I say, and this is a matter we have covered before, vis-a-vis the self-fulfilling prophecy is real. To wit, if you continue in fear, the thing that you fear will become your reality. Now, let me tell you something. Whilst you allow your heart and your mind to be plagued by fear, whether you realize it or not, and whether you intend to or not, you are indicting the Most High Elohim. And if you're asking yourself, on what grounds are we indicting the Most High Elohim? What is the charge? What are the counts? Well, I'll tell you. If you live your life in fear, you are indicting him on account that he is not able to do what he said he would do. Else, why would you fear? Here lies the inflection. Vis-a-vis, you can only fear if you don't have faith. And if you don't have faith in Elohim, you will at some point indict him. You will challenge his authority. You will question his abilities. The list goes on. So be advised, for all these are acts of blasphemy. Not only this, but I call upon you to hear the word of Elohim. You blasphemers, listen to the Torah of Yahuwah, you faint of heart. I don't know what God you're serving, but let me tell you something. The mighty one I serve sits high above all nations, and his esteem is above the heavens. Now look, listen, it has been written, see, I am Yahuwah, the Elohim of all flesh. Is there any matter too hard for me? I am Yahuwah. I make all things, stretching out the heavens all alone, spreading out the earth with none beside me. Now, if you truly believe that, and all the other wonderful testimonies to the power and the might of Yahuwah of hosts, what are you afraid of? My dear friend, what are you afraid of? Whatever it is, I promise you, if you follow the teaching in this upcoming series, you will face these fears and you will overcome them. For by the fear of Elohim, our love is perfected, and perfect love will cast out all fear. Heretofore, I recommend, don't give in to fear. Listen to me. Nothing he says is true. For we serve a mighty one whose eye is on the sparrow, and there is nothing he can't do. Now, here is today's assignment. Meditate on the word you have heard today. And as always, ask the Father to reveal the truth to you. For the children of Elohim live by conviction. And if he has not convicted you, or if you had not heard him concerning these matters, you should pray until you do. Today, I want you to meditate on the word I have shared. Specifically, I want you to meditate on any areas in your life where you are not acting in accordance with your beliefs or failing to practice what you preach. And in the spirit of honesty, I want you to look at yourself in the mirror and ask, what am I afraid of? If Yahuwah, by his word or his Ruach, has revealed his will to you, why aren't you following it? Why aren't you guarding his command? What are you afraid of? Find the answer to that question, my friend, and stay with me. For in the upcoming lessons, I will show you how you can wield the power of the fear of Elohim to eliminate all your fears and everything that could cause you to despair. Then it will be up to you to walk in the fear of Elohim. It will be up to you to maintain your spiritual values, and it will be up to you to embrace the spirit of reverence. Then and only then will you know what it is to worship the Most High Elohim in spirit and in truth. Now, here is what's next. We completed today's podcast, End Times 470, a fearless nation of fearful men. And the next podcast is entitled End Times 471, an intro to the fear of Elohim, Part 1. I will post this podcast on Wednesday, May 14th, 2025. Until then, my friends, continue to be led by the spirit of Elohim, continue to watch, continue to pray, continue in fasting, and most of all, continue to be focused, for the end is coming. The end is near.